October 3, 1943. High above the frigid, gray expanse of the North Sea, a B-17 flying fortress battled the elements and enemy fire. Inside, a waist gunner felt the chilling touch of the .50 caliber Browning machine gun against his cheek. His keen eyes tracked a Messerschmitt Bf 109 weaving dangerously amongst the bomber formation, a mere 200 yards distant. Breath swirling into a frosty haze before his sight. His leather-clad fingers trembled, not with fear, but with the weight of the decision he was about to make. Every fiber of his being screamed for direct attack. His instincts raged to align the reticle on the German fighter's nose and unleash a hail of fury. Defying those urgings, he took aim at what seemed to be empty space, a .6 plane lengths behind the enemy aircraft. He squeezed the trigger, and the machine gun roared to life. 2 heartbeats later, the Messerschmitt erupted in a cataclysm of fire and mangled metal, plummeting towards the sea. In that instant, this gunner vindicated a concept that defied logic. When firing from a speeding bomber at an equally fast target, aiming directly was the surest path to failure. The key to survival lay in targeting where the enemy had been just moments before. This idea wasn't born of chance, but evolved from years of meticulous study, profound understanding of physics, and rigorous training. This obscure technique transformed nervous airmen into the most lethal defensive marksmen of the war. The genesis of this revelation traces back 3 years to an unlikely place, the desolate desert outside Las Vegas, Nevada. January 25, 1941. Colonel Martinez Steneth stepped out of his vehicle into a 60-square-mile expanse of what seemed like absolute desolation. Sand, sparse vegetation, and unending winds painted a scene of emptiness. Yet, this harsh landscape was destined to become the most vital aerial gunnery school in American history. The challenge confronted by the Army Air Corps was simple, yet alarming. The United States didn't have proper schools for training aerial gunners. There was no standardized instruction or field-tested methods to teach young men how to accurately shoot from a speeding aircraft at a target moving at hundreds of miles per hour. Without skilled gunners, the ambitious strategic bombing campaign was doomed from the start. Heavy bombers, like the B-17 Flying Fortress, boasted 13.50 caliber machine guns. But without adequately trained men to operate them, these weapons were rendered useless. The British had already learned this lesson, paying a heavy price in blood. Their gunners, only trained on stationary ground targets, were easy prey for German fighters in the skies above Europe. Determined to avoid repeating those mistakes, the Americans committed to finding a solution. In March, construction crews arrived and transformed the barren desert into a network of barracks, classrooms, and firing ranges. By June, more than 100 instructors had arrived, taking on the immense task of instilling a skill that was not well understood in the nation. 2 days after the attack on Pearl Harbor, the orders came. The base was to begin operations instantly. The war was upon them, and America was in desperate need of gunners. The first trainees arrived at the Las Vegas Army Airfield just before Christmas. Their education began with the basics of shotguns and clay pigeons. They practiced hitting moving targets from fixed positions, learning the traditional skill of leading a target. All of this was thrown into disarray the moment the instructors placed those shotguns on the backs of moving trucks. Clay pigeons sailed through the air untouched, regardless of how precisely they aimed ahead. Bewilderment rippled through the ranks. They were acting on their instincts, so why were they missing? The answer rested within a truth that was so hard to grasp. Even the most experienced instructors had problems explaining it. Sergeant Robert Hayes, a Texan with a true knack for physics, stepped forward. Standing before his students, he drew a simple diagram. A bomber advanced at 300 miles per hour. A fighter approached at the same speed. A bullet left the gun's barrel. The assumption was that the bullet traveled in a straight line. But this was not the case. It carried the bomber's speed with it, arching through the air on a diagonal path. The faster the bomber traveled, the more noticeable the curve became. To effectively hit a fighter coming from the side, the gunner was to aim behind it. Hayes illustrated this using a string and a weight, walking forward as the weight swung. The weight, he explained, behaved just like the bullets. It did not fall straight down, but carried momentum. The lesson was clear. When a gunner is in motion, With a target that is also in motion, the rules change. To hit the mark, one must aim where the target was, not where it currently is. By 1942, this insight became the basis of position firing. Instead of relying on instinct alone, gunners were trained to precisely calculate deflection, to foresee where the fighter and the bullet would meet on their paths. Classrooms were filled with charts, diagrams, and tables full of formulas. Gunners memorized radians of deflection, each denoting the angular distance needed to aim behind the fighter. For an attack at a 90-degree angle, this could mean aiming as much as 12 plane lengths behind the enemy. It seemed ridiculous, but it proved effective. By the summer of 1942, Las Vegas was producing 600 new gunners every 5 weeks. Their 6-week training course turned into a gold standard model. The first week was spent in ground school, learning the fundamentals of the Browning machine gun, how to identify aircraft, and the physics of ballistics. During the second week, they were put in the back of moving trucks to shoot at moving targets, forcing the gunners to discard what they knew. The third week introduced manipulation trainers, mock turrets where students tracked wire-suspended replicas of enemy planes through the sky. Week 4 presented the Waller Trainer, an early flight simulator. Enemy fighters were projected onto a curved screen, recording every shot and teaching split-second decision-making. By week 5, trainees went airborne in real bombers, firing at towed targets. To keep track of progress, their ammunition was color-coded so instructors could track who hit what. By week 6, only the most proficient remained. Those who passed earned aviator wings and joined bomber crews who were already going on missions over Europe. By mid-1943, over 57,000 aerial gunners had graduated from American gunnery schools. But training was one thing, and facing combat was something else entirely. On August 17, 1943, 376 B-17 bombers flew deep into Germany, headed for Feinfort and Regensburg. The Luftwaffe unleashed over 400 fighters against them. In fierce battles under clear skies, the bombers lost 60 planes, a stunning 20%. But they also managed to shoot down 27 German fighters. Waste gunners who spent time in the Nevada desert were putting their deflection charts and position firing to use. They weren't aiming at the fighters but behind them, depending on their training, and the bullets were finding their way. Those who ignored their training and targeted directly missed their marks. Mathematics had proven effective, more than instinct. As the war raged on, so did technology. In late 1943, the British introduced a new invention, the Mark II Euro gun sight. It used gyroscopes to automatically calculate deflection. The Americans quick adapted it for their own planes, creating the K-14 and similar systems for bomber turrets. With 2 reticles, the gun sights showed gunners precisely where to aim. All they had to do was keep the moving reticle on the target. In testing, hit accuracy doubled almost overnight, immediately. By mid-1944, many bombers were equipped with these gun sights or simpler compensating versions that automatically made adjustments for airspeed and altitude. Training also began changing. New methods, like Operation Pinball, elevated realism to unseen heights. At Las Vegas, instructors piloted armored P-63 King Cobras, vibrantly painted and fitted with sensors that lit up when hit by bullets. For the first time, students were firing at real, maneuvering aircraft. Accuracy had improved significantly. Trainees gained a level of assurance that no simulator could provide. By early 1945, the 7 gunnery schools together had trained over 200,000 gunners. When the B-29 Superfortress was used in the Pacific War, it featured an entirely new innovation: remote-controlled turrets linked to computers that automatically handled deflection and bullet drop. Gunners sat inside pressurized compartments, guiding their turrets through periscope sights as computers did the math. The gunner's job was to focus on tracking the target as the fast Japanese fighters came at them. The system was effective. It demonstrated the lesson from Nevada, that human reflex could not beat physics, but technology and training paired together could defeat target. By the end of the war, more than 214,000 men had completed American gunnery schools. Las Vegas alone was responsible for 44,000 graduates. They were taught a difficult lesson to ignore the natural urge to aim at the enemy. Statistics are impossible to measure, but the evidence was conclusive. Properly trained gunners were more effective. Their survival depended on courage and their ability to think analytically in the middle of combat. They embraced disciplined precision and trusted science, not just instinct. The lesson of the gunners remained long after. The concepts of position firing were used in Korea, where B-29 gunners faced Soviet MiG-15 jets. Today, fighter pilots depend on these same physics principles, though calculations are handled by computers. The old Las Vegas Army Airfield is now Nellis Air Force Base, home of the U.S. Air Force Weapons School and the Thunderbirds. The desert ranges where students once fired from truck beds are gone. Yet, the ideas they learned still apply. When moving, the pilot doesn't aim where the target is, but where it will be. This is a valuable lesson. It shows the human ability to learn counterintuitive ideas and trust results. Those young recruits who once fumbled shotguns in the Nevada desert became sky defenders because they learned to think and abandon instinct. They were taught to believe math problems on blackboards and advice from the instructors to aim behind, even when their instincts told them to aim ahead. When the bullets started flying and enemy closed in, that advice saved their lives. The story is about faith. It reveals the victory of training. In a world where disorder ruled the skies, they learned that survival required thinking against the grain. As a result, many of people survived. Physics doesn't care what feels like. It only cares about what delivers results. And during World War II, in the skies, what worked was the idea born in the desert. To hit the object, you must have another view of the action.